The International Association for Near-Death Studies presents NDE Radio, a weekly exploration of near-death experiences and similar encounters with the other side. Now, here's your host, Lee Witting.
Welcome to NDE Radio, brought to you by IANDS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I'm your host, Lee Witting. Our guest today, Rex Finfgeld, experienced an NDE in 2011 when he fell 26 feet and landed headfirst on concrete. He spent a month in the hospital and 5 days in a coma with bleeding on the brain in 3 places with a traumatic brain injury. He also had 20 broken bones and a badly punctured lung with massive internal bleeding. The healing process took nearly 2 years, including surgeries and therapy. But sometime while he was comatose and crashing, he had an experience of an NDE. He says, I experienced my own pure being. I was still me, but I was also pure being itself. For a moment, I was the all of everything. I was pure love, life, and the mind and imagination that gives rise to all of creation. Since his NDE, he now sees and thinks in ways he never thought possible, especially regarding consciousness, divinity, the unified field, and a perspective multi-universal reality. As well, he is living a life he never thought possible. In addition to being a writer and presenter, Rex has become a musician, performing in a band and working on his own original music. Rex's book, titled My Experiment with Gravity, is available through Amazon. Rex, welcome to NDE Radio.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I appreciate it.
Oh, well, it's good to have you. I wanted to mention you had told me that you had fallen from a cottonwood tree.
Yes.
That you were a climber and actually climbed, I guess, some mountains and hills, and just something in you that wanted to climb, and that you'd, I guess, climbed this tree many times before.
Right.
But then because the dry season had some brittle branches, they broke and you fell. But I wanted to mention about cottonwood trees. I have a thing for cottonwood trees myself. Down around the base of Montezuma's Well, which is in Rimrock, Arizona. It's a site sacred to the Hopis. The outflow from that well has a whole bunch of cottonwood trees, some of them almost horizontal. And I like to, when I'm there, it's one of my favorite places in Arizona. I like to climb up there and just sit and meditate for a while. But there's another thing about cottonwood trees that's kind of interesting. When 9/11 occurred and the buildings were crashing down, there was a steel beam that would have wiped out the historic St. Paul's Chapel. It was a little chapel that dates back to the 1700s when George Washington gave his inauguration address. He afterwards went to the chapel to pray. This huge steel beam came crashing down, would have totally demolished St. Paul's Chapel, but for the fact that a cottonwood tree got hit instead, and the beam veered off. It didn't even knock down any of the tombstones in St. Paul's graveyard. So the cottonwood basically, it died in the process, but it saved the chapel. And to honor that cottonwood tree, they bronzed the root ball, and if people go to Trinity Church in just above Wall Street in New York City, it sits outside on the porch of Trinity Church. It's this huge thing. You can step right into it, and the amazing thing about it is it vibrates to the city. You know, if a subway goes by or the car traffic, it's like you're in a living thing. It's really quite amazing. So
it sounds really amazing.
Yeah, so if you get to New York City, go down and see this root ball that's sitting outside of Trinity Church. Tell me about what happened during your NDE after this terrible fall.
Those moments while near death, basically. Yeah, I mean, basically, like I said, to elaborate on what you'd already had said to everyone. I literally I wasn't myself. I mean, I was aware of me, the person that is Rex. I mean, I guess you could say in a manner of speaking, the ego was intact, but I had no concept of my physical body whatsoever. I was just being. I mean, I was I was life itself. I mean, I wasn't alive, but I was the source of life. We've been describing, love and mind and the consciousness. I mean, it wasn't that I was experiencing love, but I was love. Because I was life. I was that mind. I mean, and in those moments, on the one hand, it was just an essence. Just an essence of being. There's a piece of this there was no point of experience, just being itself in the purest state of that of, you hear from many NDEers, that of just the purest just space of love. And in that space, though, this is where it's kind of interesting because sometimes I'm asked, well, how long did it last? I don't really have a sense of time about this because when I think about it, I remember it as but a moment. But in that moment was an eternity. I mean, it was just the infinity of possibilities, the possibilities of the all of everything. Basically, and when I explain this is to me also explaining like the field of consciousness. There are some theoretical physicists that will say that this is one way to explain the unified field. I mean, I'm not a scientist, so this is going to be the NDEers take on this. But this is, the floor, the core of our existence right here, where imagine for a moment all of the universe, whatever that may really be, to whatever great expanse it is. Right now we think it's about 13.8 billion years old, roughly. And I'm speculating there's a lot more to it than that. I mean, we know that there's a lot more that we don't know than we do know. With that, imagine all of time, past, present, and future. Just put that into a singularity. All of the universe, all of space, all of time, all at once. Almost like that primordial particle that basically gave way to cosmic inflation. And whether imagine every probability and possibility, I mean, as in every parallel universe, every multiple reality, everything from different versions of our own selves having different kinds of experiences to a version of a universe so abstract and foreign to us we couldn't even exist in it, let alone even imagine it. All of these possibilities, everything, all it was all existing all at once. In quantum theory, the term is superposition with respect to particles existing in more than one place at a time. In this case, this is all of every single experiential possibility, all existing all at once. And just for a moment, this is what I was. I wasn't just experiencing in this. I was this. This was what I would say soul, not just my soul, but soul itself. That part of all of us is not just me, but the part of all of us that is divine, pure, and if I may dare say, innocent. I've definitely not been innocent in this life, but this is something that tapped into something that is still innocent within me. And, one of the things that I seek to do in my presentations and in my books and music is to tap into that part of us, no matter what you've been through in this life, no matter where you've been, that part of it that still has that childlike innocence within, that purest form of this absolute agape, divine God's love, if you will.
The Quaker faith, the Society of Friends, teaches that we have the spark of the divine. We have the spark of God in each of us.
Every one of us.
It sounds like that spark totally enveloped you. And because it's interesting that you still felt yourself as being yourself, that your ego survived this identity with all consciousness.
I'm not sure if I could think of it in terms of, I remember I wasn't thinking like Rex more in linear terms as we think of, I'm speaking with Yuli and, there's this Rex sitting here having a conversation but yet, I don't know how to explain this. This is going to seem kind of a little bit contradictory, but at the same, because I was me. I mean, I was very cognizant that I was me, but it wasn't like it was necessarily Rex because I felt like I was this being. Everything I described to you, this is exactly, this was me. I mean, I realized that this wasn't something that was removed from me, that came towards me and connected with me or something. This is something I just realized was already within, an already naturally infused, inherent part of my own being, that deepest source.
Mm. So that meanness was not Rex. It was your You know, when near NDEers sometimes talk about merging into the light, of God, the light of love and the light of God, you were identifying yourself more as that spark of God than you were identifying yourself as the being that's Rex.
Correct. Yeah, for a moment I was like all of the everything. I guess there was a part of me that was still Rex, but then there was the rest of me that was God in that moment. You know, that part of all of us that is God. For a moment I was home, if you will.
Yes. So, but you didn't feel like you'd gone through a tunnel, traveled into the light, the sort of typical description, that time-based description, really, because it takes time to go through a tunnel and go into the light. This was instantaneous.
Yeah, this was all. Yeah, it's interesting because Jonathan Hagelin, who's a theoretical physicist, I remember I think it was in the film What the Bleep a number of years ago, and I saw that described the universe as a thought universe, and what I experienced was exactly that. It was basically thought. The entire if you will, was just like a thought process, but it was from the deepest part of my being. I mean, it was to understand. No, I was experiencing dark. I was experiencing light, and everything in between. Everything was here. Yet the essence of it all was that pure sense of love. So I didn't have the experiential component to it, but yet at the same time, every part of that was there. Sometimes I'm asked, did you see any loved ones? Did you experience, divine beings or anything like that? And it's like, not specifically in the moment of the NDE. However, a door has been kicked wide open as a result of this NDE, where ever since then, I have all of these experiences. And I experience outside of my own physical being all the time. I have relationships with beings that are not just here in the physical realm. I know I do have a presentation that talks about that, having experiences with extra-dimensional beings, or in some cases, some people might want to call them the ETs, everything to angels, to any number of different kinds of these. I don't like to use the term higher level beings, but we'll just say more energy based beings. I mean everything's energy, but and I guess less corporeal, if you will, just much more of a fluidic, energetic state of being.
Right. It seems to me that, and I've thought this in the past, that the big block to our being in touch with these things that you're talking about is our brain, which is. It wants to keep us here in the three-dimensional world, dealing with the physical problems and inspirations that come out of that. But when the brain gets injured, it opens up all kinds of possibilities. I had a friend who had a grand mal seizure, and she said during that seizure she had the answer to every question she'd ever wanted to know about. And It was only after that electricity passed and she was back to normal that she couldn't remember the answers to all those questions. But for that moment when the brain was disabled, she was in the light, basically.
Interesting. And I would imagine, and I don't know her, and it'd be interesting to sit down and be able to speak with this person, but I have to believe that opening that door is doable for her. She's done this once. I have to believe that she could do it again. I mean, I don't feel like I'm any different than anybody else. So sometimes I hear about NDEers talk about they have the NDE, and when they come back, that moment is just that NDE, and they're not necessarily experiencing in that. Although I hear a lot of NDEers, and a lot of my friends that are NDEers will talk about being far more sensitive, intuitive, psychic, and all of that. But it's interesting to me that not more NDEers, that door doesn't stay open for more NDEers after the NDE. Because I don't know why exactly. I mean, yes, I do nurture it and I meditate on it all the time because I don't want to lose this by any means. But it just seems like the longer more time goes by, I think the more acclimated. It's been 8, almost 9 years. I'm still kind of getting used to this. I mean, it's been such profound change and transformation.
You do have to keep working on it in order to. Well, in fact, one of the reasons that I love doing this show is because every week I'm reminded of other people's experiences of what I experienced as a child, and it refocuses me once again. It's like a weekly jump into the void to find out, what other people's take is on this experience of the near death.
And that's the thing too. I'm glad you brought up this idea of the void. And one thing I was going to throw out there, and I don't know if we can dive into this so much, but I mean, even in science, in the depths of space, in this whole void of space, we realize there's more energy in this void than there is in the physical universe that we experience. In terms of our, corporeal three-dimensional state of the universe, we understand that, what we experience, what we observe is only about 3% of the overall universe. So.
Yes. Do you feel that, like other people that you made reference to come back feeling like they've been given gifts? Do you feel that you received any, abilities that you didn't have prior to the fall?
Yes, definitely. I would say, I've got my drummer of my band. He goes by K9. We call him 9 for short, but he refers to this as a blurse. It's a blessing and a curse at the same time. Because my sensitivities, since this has happened, have just gosh, it's just I like 100-fold. And more time goes by, the more sensitive I become. And I've already had a sort of an OCD quality about me, and that's just become much more intense. But it's given me the ability to understand and see and make sense of things I never have before. And this is what's interesting. On the one hand, I have some major memory issues. I get headaches, and there's a lot of things that have come with this traumatic brain injury and this whole event. But at the same time, this ability to understand in the abstract and understand, on the levels of consciousness and be able to have conversations about it and express ideas about it. I have ideas on gravity's connection with a multi-universal reality in a unified field that I look forward to continuing to present that I think could really be groundbreaking. And a little bit I've had a chance to expose these ideas. People have been very, very excited about it. Even people in the scientific community have been very excited about the prospect of what I'm explaining. Another thing that's happened, in terms of just, this life here, this might be for me the most fun thing. This is all amazing stuff and mind blowing. But I've been a DJ since I was 16 years old. I can mix beats and I can get people dancing, and I've been doing it for years. It's one of my favorite things in the world to do. Mm-hmm. As much now as it was when I was 16 years old. But I never imagined over all these years I would ever become a musician, that I would actually be in a band. I've done a little bit of music. I did some choir in high school, played a little bit of guitar as a teenager, but that was a long time ago. I'm 53 years old now. But 5 years ago, again, a bit of a long story, but I very serendipitously found myself in a band. It was very unexpected. I didn't plan on this at all. I don't think anyone really did. And this band is grown and evolved into something really special, and it's become very much a part of my family and a family with which I am a part. It's a really special group of people. And from that, I became a percussionist, a drummer. And now I'm a producer. I write and compose music. And this is the craziest part. Yes, I've been playing in this band for 5 years, but I still don't know what key anything's in. I can't tell you what notes anything is. But yet from intuition and through ear, I work on a program called Ableton. It's an electronic digital audio workspace program. And you can write and mix master everything on the software. It's incredible. And I started doing this literally a year ago. Thanksgiving weekend last year was when I wrote my first piece of music. And in the last year, I've written 27 pieces of music. And I know you might be wondering, well, are they any good? I'd like to think so, only because I have a life of being a nightclub and concert promoter, event promoter. So I have a lot of musician friends. I have a lot of artist friends. So I still do. And I have a number of my musician friends that want to play and perform with me. I've got, besides my Quantum Beings of the Miraculous, my main band that I'm in, I have a second band called The Uninhabited, with just me and one other gentleman, and we have some other folks that we have come in as guests. And it's amazing to me that and this is all my music. Where The Uninhabited is all my music. Quantum Beings, of course, it's a group. All of us work on, contribute to writing of the music in that band. But this other project, it's all my music. And then of course I do have a solo project as well. and a number of people that are telling me how great the music is. I've even sold some tracks online, so I know it's not too terrible for a guy that has never written music in his life to just start doing this and feel like it just resonates. It's something that just resonates. I don't want to say it's so great or anything other than something about it just really resonates, and the people that seem to be hearing it so far have been very, very supportive and very positive.
Well, scientists and mathematicians, scientists and mathematicians and musicians do have a lot in common. It's a way of looking at the world or thinking about things, and they often will draw on musicians to do computer work, for instance. Even if they haven't developed the computer skills yet, they see musicians as potentially being very good on the computer. I want to go back though for a minute to your thoughts about gravity. What your book, which is tell me the title again, because I just went right out of my head.
The first book of the first book is called My Experiment with Gravity.
Okay.
It's interesting because that has nothing to do with my ideas on gravity. Those actually came later. That has to do with a play on the fall.
Well, that's what I thought when I haven't had a chance to read the book yet, but that's what I thought. And I also thought about Isaac Newton, where the apple falls out of the tree and it's him on the head. I've actually joked about that sometimes. In fact, when I did that presentation on the true nature of gravity, I actually joked about that. Yeah, all Isaac Newton had is just an apple fall on his head. I actually fell out of a tree on my head. Come on, Exactly. So tell me a little about your theories on gravity.
Oh goodness, where to start? All right, let's just start here. And this is really expanding on special relativity with Einstein. I'm not necessarily changing a lot. I think we're expanding on some things here. I'm looking at gravity is really very much infused in the fabric of space-time. We talk about space-time oftentimes, and you'll hear that mentioning. And I know that Einstein touched upon this as well. But gravity is infused as part of the field of space-time. I don't see gravity as necessarily a dimension in the same context of height, width, and depth. Depends on how you define dimension as to whether gravity is a fourth dimension or not. I'm going to say, personally, I don't think that it is. I feel like it's a part of the field of space-time and gravity. And gravity essentially is like an incredibly energetic, highly malleable, framework of space-time. It's what makes space-time work. It's what gives movement to space and flow to time. Without gravity, neither could work. Of course, all three are pretty much codependent on the other. Now, space-time gravity, mind you, goes beyond what we would think of as just this universal construct of what we think of as the universe so far. There's a reason why gravity right now does not fit into the theory of everything. I don't think we have time to dive into what all that is, but in theoretical physics, there's a theory of everything that tries to explain in a simple equation, much like relativity, basically the universe. And so far, it's pretty easy for them to explain the strong and weak nuclear forces and electromagnetism, but they can't seem to get gravity to fit in, and I'm suggesting gravity doesn't belong there because next to consciousness, gravity is the most fundamental force of existence, and I'm talking about a perspective multi-universal existence here, meaning gravity exists before our perspective birth of the universe and will exist beyond whatever we perceive to be the death of this universe. So go ahead.
It's more than mass. Then it's more than physical mass. As the sun has more gravity than the Earth does but they just recently they were able to detect. I think it was a collision of two black holes generated a wave that with detectors on the east and west coasts of this country, they were able to pick up a vibration of that wave for the first time.
Which is pretty awesome. And now think about this. And again, there's a lot of directions we can go with this. And in this few minutes, I'm sure I'm going to miss a lot of things I like to say. But anyways,
sure.
When we think about, now check this out. When you think about waves, when I first heard that, and I'm starting to get these epiphanies about gravity, I thought to myself, like most people, let's think in terms of light waves and sound waves and waves like that. And then it hit me. No. Gravity is more like water. No, gravity and water are not the same. But the nature and the movements of the depths of the ocean I think, have a lot of similarity to the nature and the movements of the flow of gravity on the perspective of multi-universal existence, even within the scope of what we consider to be the universe. Gravity's movements move a lot like water moving up onto the beach. Gravity can move on multiple layers within itself. Now, when I'm not talking, I think gravity doesn't just move in one direction. Water doesn't just move in one direction. It moves in many different directions at the same time, even within the context of the depths of an ocean.
Wow.
So that's just one thing to think about. And something else I want to throw in there that I think is important. We think of gravity as responding. It's reacting. We hear, the big cloud of gas that forms that beautiful nebula in a part of the Milky Way galaxy, starts to move and swirl, and eventually all those chemicals and the gases start to connect in such a way that it eventually forms a star, which forms planets, forms a solar system. Now, right now, the school of thought is that, yes, there's a lot of factors that I think that get those gases and particles moving. But not the least of which is gravity itself. So it's not that everything starts to move and congeal and starts to become, the embodiment of, say, a sun, in which gravity now starts to move towards the sun and becomes stronger because of the creation of the star. It's the other way around. I'm going to suggest that it's the movement of gravity. Gravity has a willfulness to it. It is part of the conscious construct. Gravity is the mover. Gravity is the sculptor, if you will. It's like, gravity is, imagine, if you will, the multiverse is like a lump of clay, and gravity, if you will, is sort of the sculptor of this vast, multi-dimensional, multi-universal lump of clay, if you will, moving and creating and expanding and contracting and fusing and pulling apart, and just all of these things that are all taking place all at once.
Wow, I love this. This is an amazing thought. Do you suppose dark matter is a manifestation of gravity?
Absolutely, everything's a manifestation of gravity. Okay. I mean, I'm not going to say gravity specific. Okay, let's talk about how is gravity manifesting. Let's take gravity all the way down to the quantum level. There is in science today, talk of what's called quantum gravity. Now, I'm not sure I resonate on exactly how some of these theories work, but quantum gravity resonates. Gravity is working on the most subtle of levels. So when it's bringing things together and manifesting, we could look at the physics, the processes, at least in terms of what we know right now, at least some of these processes. So gravity is basically helping, these atomic structures to connect. It's helping right on down to the fundamental particles so that they're all vibrating in such a way that the universe basically comes out the way that it does. I mean, there's a very specific process at work for our reality, our experience, this universe, everything to be just so that it actually functions in the way that it does. A cosmologist named Laura Danley made the comment, and I remember where I heard her say this, but this is, I think, very telling. Coming from a cosmologist, no less. She says, if there's one part in a quintillion, which I believe is 1 with 18 zeros, if one part in a quintillion is off in the universe as we know it collapses, does not function. Which tells me the level of detail upon which the divine, if you will, this divine mind, this consciousness, in moving into the fundamental forces like gravity and manifesting this reality. Wow. That's a very, very short way to explain it. This is something I like to take 3 hours to explain normally, or more, if I can, but give you a little bit of an idea, a little taste.
I love it. Are you going to go into it? You're coming out with a new book in the spring, I Never Die, a 21st Century Book of the Dead. Do you have any room in that book for discussion of gravity as well?
Actually, gravity is going to be in my third book, which is called Envisioning God, Dreaming the Ultimate Dream. So gravity, I will be explaining that, but it'll be in book 3, which will probably be out late 2020.
Okay, wow. Well, along with everything else, you've become very productive as a writer. A lot of thoughts getting expressed here. Unfortunately, we are just about out of time for today. But tell the folks where they can find out more about you and the book that's already in print.
Yes. Like you said earlier, the book is available at Amazon.com. Also, please take a look at my website. It's gravity.life. You can buy my book there. Take a look at all my band photos and take a look at even my martial arts and other things that I'm doing. So it's all there. So please take a look at it.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. And if you want to get in touch with me, please do. I love to travel, do presentations, book signings, all of that kind of stuff.
Excellent. Maybe you'll have a CD of your own music up there at some point too.
I've got some of my tracks on my website now, and I will have a CD out hopefully in 2020. There's a lot of things are planned. I'm really looking forward to 2020. It's going to be a big year.
Terrific.
I think not just for me, but it feels big for everybody.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Rex, for being on the show. For our audience, if you'd like to listen to the show again or any of our past shows, just go to our website at nderadio.org. For information on IANDS, check out their website at IANDS.org. And join us again next Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern, for more NDE Radio. This is Lee Witting saying thanks for listening.
Thank you. Much love.